guys, welcome back to War for Men podcast. We officially has changed our name from Ironcast to War for Men podcast. Today we have a very awesome special guest, Skyeler Lucero. Here as he starts talking to us, you're going to be like, why does he sound familiar? Well, if you listen to our audiobook, War for Men, he is the voice actor of War for Men Ironhide. Perfect voice. Know him from the military. We served together in the 19th SF group. We were both combat cameramen. Did a lot of awesome work, a lot of awesome trips. And Lucero has been through the ringer from childhood to adulthood, and he's going to teach us about his resiliency path and how he just keeps pushing through. Pretty wild. So I'm excited. Go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
All right. Yep. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. So Skyeler Eugene Lucero. It's been a long time, but me and Jake worked together in the 19th Special Forces group in the ComCam section, combat camera. It was a lot of fun, and there were some very fond memories in that time there, but also there were some rough patches there.
Yeah.
But it's been how long? Geez, since 2017, I think is when I got out.
Yeah.
Then I spent some time, almost 2 years out of the Army. And when my wife decided she wanted to go back into school and start her career path, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get back in and just kind of help her out with that in terms of like the benefits and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun.
One thing that we want to talk about was your childhood trauma. And like the thing that I find interesting about childhood trauma in general, I mean, that stuff sticks with you. Even if you don't really remember, somehow it's still ingrained in the back of our minds. We've been learning a little bit about that and how childhood trauma can affect you as adulthood, even if you don't remember anything that's happened. All these years that I've known you, I would have never have guessed that you had childhood trauma. And now we get to learn about that today. Tell us a little bit about it.
When I was a child, and I'm going to set a disclaimer here. My father, he's a great man. I love my father. We get along just fine. And he's quite a changed man. But what I'm going to get into is that my father, a long time ago, he suffered from severe alcoholism. He substance abuse. And with that, you hear about some people how they have that fun uncle who gets drunk and he gets silly and they have a good time and whatever, or that friend, or they have parties and they just have some silly times. And that's fine. I can respect that. If that's how things work out for you, great. For some people, like my father and even my older brother, when they drank, they sort of became, well, specifically my father, he became a different person entirely, a different creature. And there were a lot of times where, and he led a stressful life, working man, and just trying to keep it together, right? And he struggled with that. And when that would happen, there would be times when he'd come home and a lot of fights would start with my mother or sometimes with my older siblings. And when my dad was drunk, it was very, like I said, he was a different person. His temper was very short, and there were times when he would freak out, and things would go flying, holes would be punched in walls, things would be busted. And unfortunately, in some cases, some fights ensued between him and my brother. Some of the most impactful moments in regard to my father's alcoholism, when I was, I think, one of the further ones back, I was 12. Okay. I was 12 years old, and we went fishing. This is when I lived in Elko. We went fishing at a reservoir called Wild Horse Reservoir, and it was about 65 whatever miles out of Elko. And this is in a time before smartphones and really cell phones in general. So we're out there in the middle of kind of nowhere, and my dad and my brother, they broke out the 30 pack or whatever, and I was just like, oh, this might not go well. And I had my little brother who was 3 years old at the time.
So how many siblings do you have?
Okay, so I've got 4 siblings, an older brother, an older sister, and 2 younger brothers, and we're kind of spread out.
So there's 5 of you.
5 of us, yes.
And you're more of like the middle child?
I am the middle child, yes.
Perfect. And like how much older is your older brother? Like we're talking like 2 years or?
No, he's about 9 years older than me.
Okay.
And I'm 9 years older than the little brother in this story. So like I said, we're spread out. We're out on this fishing trip, and my dad and my brother break out the beers and they start drinking them down, right? And they start talking, and at first they're in that sort of funny, buzzed, drunk kind of mode. And they're having these conversations, and it goes from they were talking about fights that they had gotten into through the years, right? And my brother had been highly involved in gang stuff, and he mentioned a gang fight type thing that happened. And my dad was always very anti-gang stuff. He didn't like my brother listening to rap music or anything like that. And when my brother had told that story, it totally shifted the tone. And then my dad started going after my brother for his gang stuff, and then my brother was firing back at him. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh great, what do I do? Like, we're not at home. Nobody can intervene right here. So my little brother, I was like, well, hey buddy, let's just go in the tent and just hang out in there, okay? And here I am, like I don't know what to do. Like, they're only going to get worse before anything gets better. They're out there screaming at each other, and they're bringing the fight closer and closer to the tent. And my little brother is just whimpering, and I'm just kind of holding him like, I'm sorry, bud. I don't know what to do. I can't do anything here. And they were right next to the tent, just screaming at each other. And one of them snapped. One of them lunged on the other. I don't know who, but next thing I know, these two bodies come crashing down on us. They went right into onto the tent, and it just caved in on us. And I'm just trying to protect my brother, be a shield as these two men are fighting over the top of us. I was finally able to squeeze out of the tent with my brother, and my dad and my older brother were just clobbering each other. And I was trying to, stop, what you guys stop. Anyway, my brother broke free, and he grabbed me and my little brother, and he dragged us away from the camp. Down about 100 yards, there was a bus, and it was a bus that had been converted into a camper. And my brother pounded on the door. Was like, hey, help us out. Well, we had awoken these guys, right? And next thing we know, the door flies open, and there's a 357 Magnum revolver in our faces because we scared them.
Yeah.
And my brother's like, hey, whoa, it's cool. My dad's freaking out. You gotta help us out, And they were not very accommodating at first, but then my brother kind of pushed our way in, and then my dad arrived, and then it was just big, screaming match between everybody. Finally, things kind of calmed down, and my dad was like, all right, Skyeler, Caven, let's go. So we left that situation. My brother was gone, didn't know where he was. And my dad was taking us back to the camp, and he, the strangest thing happened. Okay. So, my family, we were sort of an inactive, Latter-day Saint family, members of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints, whatever. And, my dad had been never really active in the church. So the weirdest thing happened, and I don't know, blame the alcohol or some sort of divine intervention. I don't know, but my dad's like, hey, let's kneel down. Let's pray. Okay. So we did. And my dad was the one who prayed. I'd never heard him pray out loud, right? This was all bizarre. And it was almost like he had just snapped out of it somehow. So we went back to the camp, and just kind of spent the rest of the night, whatever. We were both shaken up, me and my brother. But anyway, in the morning, a police officer arrived, and he said that he had my older brother in custody. My brother apparently had thrown a rock through the window of that converted RV. And so, cops were called, and eventually he was arrested. And of course, we had to go home, and I'm sure that conversation went really well between my mom and dad about what had happened. But it was scary, that feeling of helplessness. Like, what the crap can I even do? There were episodes similar to that growing up through the years, but once I got to about high school, there was another incident in which, and I'll kind of condense it down. There was an incident in which
You don't have to condense it down, but I'm curious. Is your
Okay.
dad, after he started praying, did he slow down drinking at all, or was it just kind of a one-off thing?
It was this weird one-off thing. Like I said, I don't.
So not like a full divine intervention that changed the way
No.
he went. He just
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't like a life pivot point type thing where after that point things changed. But it was a welcome thing in that moment, given the circumstances. Again, it's not like my dad stopped drinking. That would have been great. However, he still struggled with it. He still had his demons, right? So by the time I was in high school, there was one event in particular where after he and my brother, or he and my mom had been fighting all day, he'd been drinking, and then my brother took him to his house so they could, I don't know, he could cool down. Bad idea.
It's the same older brother that he fought with?
Yeah.
Okay.
So apparently they drank a little bit together, and lo and behold, they got in a fight. So my dad had left, and my sister, I had talked to her because I called home. I said, hey, me and my friends are going to go watch a movie. We're going to do this. And my sister said, hey, just so you know, Dad's on one of his things. We had a really bad moment today. He may be at the house. I don't know. Just be careful. Mom and the boys, the younger boys, they're at a hotel tonight. They're just going to stay there. Dad can sober up. Things can, calm down. I was like, okay, cool. Well, not cool, but okay. That sucks. But I tried to enjoy the rest of the evening with my friends. And then I got home. It was dark. No one was there, or I thought. And the door was locked. So I was like, oh, maybe the back door is unlocked. I'll go around. Well, next thing you know, bam, my dad's right there. Ooh, scared the crap out of me. And he's like, hey, where's Mom? I was like, not really sure. Sounds like you guys had a bad day today. Let's just go in the house and let's just go to sleep, He's like, well, where's Mom? I don't know. I think they're at a hotel or something. Just tonight, let's just go inside and be cool. Anyway, he started getting angry, and he's like, well, and he would do this a lot, where he would get these, I don't know if you want to call it voices in his head. He would get these stories in his head that my mom was cheating on him, and these things were going down. And anyway, he would tell me all this stuff, and I'm like, it's fine. Just let's not worry about it tonight, and let's start again tomorrow. Well, he's like, you better tell me where she is. And I was like, Dad, she's at a hotel. Let's just let her be. He's like, which one? And my sister had told me, and I was like, I don't know. I think it's called Nights In or something. And I was starting to get scared because he was starting to escalate. And I was like, well.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary moment.
Like, get in the car. I was like, no, let's not worry about going out there tonight. Get in the car now. Okay. So we get in, and he starts backing out. I remember he almost ran into the fence, backed us into the fence, and then we started driving toward town. And I was like, come on, this sucks. Like, again, what do I do? He's not himself right now. He's this different creature. So we'd gone down a few blocks. My sister saw his car past she was at Maverick. She just happened to glance and see his car, and she's like, oh, damn. So I guess she called the police, but we arrived at that motel, and my dad was like, so which room she in? I said, I don't know, Dad. I don't know what room she's in. Okay. I just know she's here, and that's it. And I know what room she's in. Just tell me. Dad, just stop. And he said, you better tell me what room she's in, or I'm going to kill myself. And I'm like, really? It's like, and he kept going with that, right? And he said, he's like, do you really want to be responsible for your father's death?
Gosh.
And I'm like, come on, man. And I'm starting to get emotional. I'm scared. I'm like, I don't know that he would do it, but the fact that he's throwing this at me, freaking kid. Anyway, the police showed up right when it was starting to get, I guess, really ugly. And so they started, confronting him, questioning him. And one of the officers took me up to my mom. And I told her what had happened. And, oh, geez. It was just stupid, right? It was just rough. And I don't know. The next morning, this is the thing. Like, the next morning, my dad's all sobered up. I think he'd been bailed out, whatever. He's back home. And to him, it's like nothing had happened last night.
Does he even remember the way he acts?
So I have not talked to my dad about this moment. So I don't know if he knows what he did. I don't know if he knows even, like,
or does it just play out differently in his head, do you think? Or
and it might be that he just doesn't know anything about it, if he was so blackout drunk or whatever that that he was just that far gone, or maybe it does play out differently in his mind. I don't know. This is something that perhaps I guess when I get the courage or something, I'll be like, hey, Dad, let's talk about that one time and see what he actually recalls about it. Or if he sees this podcast,
Yeah.
maybe that'll open that up. But again, like I love my dad. I respect my dad, and I love that he has found a lot of change in his life and strength through different things. And these sort of things have not happened since basically since that time. It got really, I guess, really rough by the time I was about to leave on my LDS mission. So when I was 19.
So hang on.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
just back up a little bit. So I assume your dad, because you say you love him, you have a lot of respect for him. So I'm guessing he is an entirely different human being when he's not drunk.
Oh yeah.
And do you ever like kind of question like why, if he's such a great man when he's sober, on why he keeps going down the hole of like alcoholism and then just becoming a terror in people's lives?
Well, I mean, I guess as a kid, yeah, when I didn't fully understand, say, like his childhood and the things that he'd gone through and some of the demons, I guess that he'd faced, it was like, why is he such a cool, like funny guy, hardworking guy, whatever? But then when he drinks, he's completely different. And why is it that other people can drink and just be chill or funny or whatever?
So do you think he's trying to fight off his own demons and he's trying to numb them out through alcohol and it just comes out instead?
Definitely. Yeah. I think he would be that kind of textbook person that used substances to drown out the pain or to, whatever. So
And that's like a hard thing too, like even especially for myself, is like the power of forgiveness. And I think you far greater are better at forgiving than I am. I try so hard not to be like a grudgeful person, but like just the fact that you've had these experiences and you still say that you love and respect your dad, you still talk to him, regardless whether if you talk to him about these incidents or not. Like, I think that's really commendable. And you're not just opting out that he's a piece of shit drunk, saying, he has his own things that he needs to work through.
yeah.
And that's pretty powerful. Like, I think that's something that we can all try and get behind and try and learn the power of forgiveness in that sense.
Yeah. So for me, because I know a lot of people struggle with the idea of forgiveness, especially when some sort of abuse or whatever has happened, obviously, and totally understandably, right? For me, I just I think about grudge. Holding a grudge is the same as holding some heavy type object, right? Or something heavy and maybe pointy and uncomfortable and whatever. And to me, that's kind of like holding a grudge. It's something you have the power to put down, but sometimes we don't want to. We're like, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to forgive this person. And it's almost like saying, I just want to carry this thing, and they'll do it. Some people will do it the rest of their lives. And I guess through the years, through all these experiences, when I started to develop that sort of ability and that desire to forgive, it was the same as if things had been pulled off my shoulders, and it's like, holy crap, this is amazing. It doesn't excuse inexcusable behaviors and activities and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like, hey, I'm a forgiving person, so keep hurting me, it'll be fine. Like, no, that's not cool. Because definitely boundaries do need to be set. And okay, for my dad, like I said, he doesn't struggle with that like he did. I don't know if he drinks or not anymore, but I do know that nothing like that has happened for a very long time, and I love that. Like my own children don't have to ever see that version of my father that I had to.
Are your parents still together?
They're not. No, and this is the interesting thing. So they had a very rocky marriage, obviously, with all these sorts of things happening, right? And my mom, she always questioned it, like, oh, should I, and I think she regrets maybe that she didn't do it sooner in life. But when it did happen, it was after I left on my mission. So I was 19, and I did not know that it had happened till about 6 months out in the mission field. And at first, it was kind of a shock. Not the fact that my parents would ever divorce, because their marriage was not great, right? I'm not surprised that they eventually got divorced. However, I didn't know it happened when it did. And so it was kind of like a, ooh, and my mission president let me call home. I was like, hey, Mom, so I got a letter today about, she's like, I was like, so apparently you guys have divorced. She's like, okay, yeah, let's talk about it. So, I got to find out more about it. Well, it was actually my father who initiated that. And as he's described it to me, he realized that he had done a lot of wrong, and he had treated her very poorly and treated her like property and just all these things. And I was like, oh, this is quite the confessional, quite the thing, to learn. And yeah, so he just realized that he did some things very wrong. And I don't know how much of this he's explained to her, or if, how much he's apologized. I don't know. Right. But I can tell that there's definitely regret for those behaviors. So
Love to get your dad on this podcast.
I don't know if you get him in front of. Can't we could always try.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But that is absolutely wild. Like, even the times that I've known you, I never knew like that any of this ever happened to you or anything. So obviously you kind of kept it kind of quiet, like I did with my PTSD and stuff. But why were you silent about it?
Thinking back on it, like I don't know that. I know that you and I had discussed some difficulties that I guess probably both of us were going through, but we didn't obviously dig this deep into like our past and our childhoods. Maybe kind of more surface stuff, more recent stuff. I just don't know that there was a moment in which this sort of stuff. Like there's nothing. I don't recall a time where I was like, "Oh, I should tell him this thing about my dad." But I'm not gonna. Like, I don't know that I was really stuffing anything down. I just don't know that there was an opportunity during our time working together for it. But I do wish that we had opened up more to each other about stuff that even wasn't related to our time together in the Army or whatever. I would have loved to have known about your experiences prior, active Army and all that. I would have loved to have known more about your deployments and stuff like that. So when I did watch your segment, I was like, holy crap, this explains a little bit.
But dude, it's just insane. And like, that's kind of one thing that we're trying to change with people need to have these conversations together, let people know where they're coming from. So there's some common ground, some understanding. And I think it just really helps build the connections, whether if it's someone you're working with, your families, and the fact that communication is a very masculine thing. So people know when you need help. And rather than kind of going down the rabbit hole of like just wanting to kill yourself or before it's too late, like, I mean, it probably like if your dad, whatever he's going through, if he understood that it's still a masculine thing to communicate that he's having problems, if he sought help, like there's always that other realm where he probably would have been still happily married to your mother.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. And so like, just, I'm really hoping that people can like kind of watch this program, be a part of it, and learn to communicate, whether if it's going to save a marriage, save a life, save your relationship with your kids or even friends, make your workplace better. I'm a strong believer in communicating these things to help it out. So I really do appreciate you being on this podcast and stuff. And I'm just love that we can get to know each other on such a deeper level after all these years of knowing each other.
Yeah, 100%.
So I appreciate it. Takes a lot of strength to stand up and talk about these things. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to your childhood trauma?
I guess there's one more pretty impactful story that in regard to that. I'll go ahead and share that one.
Perfect.
I sort of call these three stories, the two that I've shared and this one, sort of like my three main stories in regard to my father's alcoholism. One, I think I was 13. We were still in Elko at this time. The one I told about the hotel and stuff, that was in Richfield. I was probably 15. So let's go back a couple years. I'm back in Elko, and similar thing, my mom and dad had been fighting. My brother took my dad out into we lived on the edge of the town there, south part of Elko. We had 4-wheeler trails, a shooting area, whatever. So my brother took my dad out to go shoot some guns because that's what you do when you've been drinking and you've been fighting. You go and shoot guns to cool off. Bad idea. So they started, I guess, kind of yelling at each other out there. And my brother's like, well, screw you, and walked away. Well, my father fired a shot into the air and then fell to the ground. My brother turned around and he's like, oh, damn, what the, he runs up to my dad, and I guess my dad just kind of laughed in his face. And of course, my brother was like, okay, double screw you, and walked off, came home, and then told my mom about what had happened. Well, my dad eventually made it back home. And then it was mom and dad screaming at each other, and then my brother and my dad. And then they got into another physical altercation, and it was pretty ugly. I think someone had their hands on someone's throat. It was crazy. And then that broke away. And then my dad went in the house and he was screaming at my mom. And then he started breaking some things. And then she's like, stop, whatever. And then he just super snapped, and he went straight to her china cabinet. She had this big china cabinet, lots of glass, lots of porcelain, lots of stuff. And he just started Hulk smashing this thing with his bare fists. And his arms, his hands were just getting cut to ribbons. And he's just bleeding all over the front room, the floor there, just bleeding. Well, luckily, at some point before that, the police had been called, and they arrived. And he, they're trying to restrain him. Well, he's breaking away from them. He's resisting it, and I could see him trying to squeeze blood out of his arms, like he was trying to bleed himself out as the police were restraining him. They finally got him down. An ambulance finally arrived. They had him freaking restrained, wrapped up his arm. It was just ugly, right? Blood everywhere. It's scary, super scary. And man, I just thinking about it, I can handle it, but at the same time, it's sometimes hard to revisit these moments. And as you were talking about earlier, sometimes things happen that we don't remember. And maybe there were some things, but for me, a lot of these things, I do remember them pretty vividly.
Essentially, the 3 stories you've told, or would you count them as like strikes to something, or?
I would just call them the 3 most impactful, say, I guess, traumatic experiences that I went through as a child. Again, there were other like smaller type events related to that sort of thing, but nothing that big.
Do you still talk to your older brother at all?
Oh yeah. Our family, we're silly. Like, we all love each other. We all get along, but we hardly correspond with each other. Like, we'll see each other after months, weeks of not even, saying anything to each other. And we're just cool. We're just cool with each other. We're not the Full House family. We're more like the Malcolm in the Middle family.
Well, hey, I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
So it's always good. Let's hear about like what part of that fight do you think is what caused trauma? Like just seeing someone trying to purposely squeeze blood out of their arms, or the fact that someone's just doing this to begin with?
With that particular story, watching him try to bleed himself out. I mean, all the other stuff was horrible, right? But watching him trying to do it, that was scary. The other story, it was the threats of, if you don't tell me where your mom is, I'm going to kill myself, sort of thing. And then the other one, just being so isolated, being so far in a time where, you couldn't just make a call or whatever. So those are kind of the 3 most, say, scary points of each of those stories.
Would you ever say that your dad was suicidal, like actually, or was it just the alcohol?
I think it was just the alcohol, honestly. I don't know that he would have ever done anything like that. But whatever it was that caused him to drink, there's definitely something heavy there.
So I had a friend, an old infantry buddy, and he always described alcohol as like, so everyone basically walks around with a gun, and you never know what anyone's going to do with that gun until they load it and have the ammo. And he always said that the alcohol is the ammunition to your gun. It gives you the ability to use it. Like, so anytime someone acts the way they are when they're drunk, it's just who they are and who they've been hiding it. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I think it depends on the person, because who my father was when he was drunk was not who he truly is.
That's deep. Where did you meet your wife?
So I met my wife after I'd gotten back from my 2-year mission. My friend Jordan had introduced us. He had met her previously, and they'd kind of spent some time hanging out, getting to know each other. But he met who would become his wife at the time. And then I'd gotten home, and he's just like, hey, I got this friend, you should meet her. they had met. The circumstances of them meeting were kind of hard because they had a common friend who had ended up getting in a car crash and dying. And so they,
That's horrific.
yeah, they met in person at this girl's funeral. That's when they connected or whatever in person. And then as all the friends were coming home, right? Next step is you got to get married, you whatever. And so he introduced us, and we just kind of hit it off and kept talking to each other. And Bob's your uncle here. We got
So
married.
what was that moment when you realized that you wanted to marry that woman?
So we were watching Beauty and the Beast, the old Disney animated Beauty and the Beast, together at her stepfather's house, and we just, I don't know, just kind of like classic, falling in love type feelings, and I don't know, romantic movie and whatever, I don't, and I just thought, this, yeah. She could be the one. I prayed about it and asked about it, and tried to do good things in terms of like, this is a big decision. I want to make sure I'm sure about it. And we'll probably get into it. We've had some definite ups and downs and everything, and questioning like, oh, was this right or whatever. But yeah, at the time, like, yeah, I felt good about it.
Now you said that you prayed about it to see if she was the one. And I hear you say this a lot, that like you prayed about different things, and even about the whole thing that you went through with your father. What made you stay religious and kind of stay away from alcohol rather than trying to go down that pathway yourself? And like, why is it that you even believe in God?
Okay. Well, I will, another kind of disclaimer. Right now, I've been on a faith journey that has brought me sort of away from organized religion into a place where I still am kind of trying to figure out what I believe, right? However, going back to the time, religion played a very, very important role in my life. So even though my family, like I said, we were a very inactive church family. My mom would go to church. I'd go to church with her. My little siblings would go to church, whatever. But my older siblings, my dad, it was not their thing. So we were, again, just kind of all over the place there. However, I strongly believe that the church played a huge role in my life in just helping me, guiding me, and the friends that were my core friends, the people that I spent the most time with. But I didn't shun or whatever other people outside of us, right? Religion taught me to love people, which I know a lot of people would question that because there are a lot of issues when it comes to religion and loving your neighbor and being kind to others who are different, whatever. Religion taught me a lot about loving people unconditionally, loving everyone around me. My mission taught me very strongly because I was in a whole different country. I was in Mexico, learning a new language, customs, culture, music, food, everything, and being amidst people who were different than me. Now, granted, I am half Mexican, technically, but this is a whole different ball game, right? And so being among these people in this whole different situation taught me that they are just as precious. They are just like, nobody has more worth than another. So that's another role kind of religion played with me, is just seeing all people like we all have worth. Even people who do terrible things in the world, like their soul has worth. We all have worth. That's a kind of a concrete principle that I will not stray from. So the value of human life and whatnot. Also, in terms of like, especially with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's the word of wisdom, right? Which is it's a law, or in some cases, or to some people, a suggestion of things that we avoid taking into our bodies, and also things that we do, like vegetables and blah, blah, blah. But so there was that side of why I didn't really touch alcohol or whatever, right? And drugs and tobacco and all this other stuff. But you could definitely say my experiences with my father took the reins on that. Like, I got to a point in my life where I'm like, even if I was straight up atheist, had no religious foundation at all, I would never touch alcohol as long as I lived, not a drop.
Just because you've really seen the extreme negatives of it, the way it turns someone into a demon almost.
Honestly, and between the church and just learning in health class about the effects of alcohol and drugs and this and that, like that would have been enough, right? But then you add that layer of personal experience and what I'd seen alcohol do to someone. I basically told myself as a young kid, I said, I will never do that to my family. I'll never do that to my wife, my children. If there's a 1% chance that I could be anything like that, hell no. I won't even touch that. Like, I'll stay away from it. And so that's how I live in terms of like alcohol and any sort of substances.
So tell us a little bit more about your marriage. Tell us some good things.
Okay.
And where you think that things kind of turned a little bit for the worse and then how you crawled out. So
Okay.
let's start out with some happy stories.
So sure. All right. So now with the culture of the church, sure, there's this kind of like this push. Oh, you're home from your mission. Well, the next step is to find your eternal companion, all that, right? And I was totally immersed in that, and I went with it. I do wish, that I had kind of taken more time to get to know myself and this and that before I got married. But hey, I didn't, and here we are. So we got married. We lived in my dad's basement for the first few months till we eventually moved up to Orem. We went to school. We went to UVU when it became UVU, Utah Valley University. I was going for a degree in Spanish. I served a Spanish mission, so that means I should do a degree in Spanish, right? It's sad. I should have pursued something I was passionate about, like theater and film. But anyway, and then she was going in for her generals and then decided to go into psychology. She had a lot more direction than I did. So we were going to school. We were kind of having a good time there in Orem, but we were super poor. I mean, right? We had tried for a child after a couple of years. She had a miscarriage, and so we kind of slowed it down. Eventually, we just sort of kind of dried up financially and had to move back to Richfield, back to Dad's basement. That's always a little embarrassing. We ended up moving to Bountiful a little bit later, and I joined the Army. Didn't think I'd ever do that. I had a friend who was military that kind of convinced me that, you know what, military is not all about infantry and blowing things up. There are jobs like related to the things you want to do. And that's kind of how I got in and ended up with the combat camera job, which was great. So I'd say one of the best parts, I guess, of our early years was I went out to Fort Meade to go to the Defense Information School, DINFOS. And because my MOS was, 8 months total. Yeah, it was a long MOS. It was 2 parts. It was basic still photography and video production. So Rachel actually got to move out there. And so I was out there for 1 month living in barracks. Rachel moved out to housing. And then I was still in barracks for about 3 weeks to a month till my first sergeant saw her. And he was like, "Who's this soldier?" "That's my wife, First Sergeant." "She just visiting?" "No, First Sergeant. She lives on post in housing." "Well, why aren't you with her?" "I got some paperwork to fill out or, whatever." I was like, there was still some hoops I had to go through. And he's like, "Go home, soldier." And I thought he said, "Go on, soldier." Like, okay, cool. Yeah, go on, move on, whatever. And I'm like, "Yes, First Sergeant." And then the CQ sergeant was like, "Did you hear him?" He said, "Go home, soldier." I was like, oh. So I got all excited and ran up and packed my duffel and then moved into housing with Rachel. And I tell you what, those remaining 6 months of me being out there, we had some very good times. And this was before we had children, although she did get pregnant while we were out there with our daughter. We got to go to DC, Baltimore, all over kind of Maryland also with my battle buddies. We had such a good time. That was probably one of the highlights, one of the best times with us of our marriage. We were on the same page. I was holding her hair while she puked every morning while she was pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, it was really good. And then, we moved back and reality kind of hits, but we had our first child, and that was one of the most special things that had ever happened to me. We've sort of, through the years, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and life is kind of like that.
Absolutely. How many kids do you have?
So we have 2 children.
2?
Yep.
And how old are they now?
So McKenna, our first, she's 12, and Riley is 10, our boy.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
What was one of the hard moments you were having with your wife?
Well, this is something you could say that kind of has been on and off through the years, and even recently we've sort of hit some rough patches. But I'm on my way to really aggressively pursue ADHD diagnosis and treatment and all that. But we'll get into that. So we struggle to be on the same page, or have struggled to be on the same page with different important life things, finances, where do we want to live, what do we want to do with our lives, sort of thing. And we've gone through situations of not quite poverty, but borderline, right? Just just not feeling that things were fulfilling for us, right? And I'm sure we both kind of have our own sort of mental health struggles here and there with different things. About 4.5 years ago, Rachel started kind of saying, "Hey, why don't we look into ADHD?" And I was kind of like, "Sure, yeah, whatever, fine." And she'd throw me a book, and I'd read the book and be like, "Okay, yeah, I don't know, maybe some things there." I wasn't taking it seriously, and that of course did not cause her to feel good. Like, she's just trying to help me. And I wasn't being super overtly resistant, but at the same time, I wasn't being very supportively pursuant of that. After some struggles recently, I finally, it's almost like a switch went off in my head. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, I probably struggle with this thing, which has probably held me back in so many different areas of my life. Because for the last, I don't know how many years now, I know what I want to do. I want to work in film. I want to work in theater. I want to do props. I want to do acting. I want to do so many of these things. And I think because of possible ADHD, I have sabotaged myself and my marriage with this. And so in the last few days, or actually a couple of weeks, I have spoken to my therapist. I'm like, all right, man, I'm really wanting to find more about this, find out if this is a thing for me. And if it is, I want to treat this thing like terminal cancer. I used to be very resistant to the idea of meds and, I don't know, severe behavioral changes and whatever, right? Because it's just so tedious. And especially for an ADHD mind, having to do all these little things, like, no, I can't focus enough to do it. And, my wife was kind of like, well, whether or not you get a diagnosis, let's just look at certain behavioral things that we can change to maybe shift and find some whatever. And I was like, no, Rachel, I am going to 100% get a diagnosis for this thing. I'm going to take every assessment. I'm going to talk. I'm going to find out. Like, I have to know. And if it is a thing, I will consider meds. I will consider whatever. Because if there is something I can do, if there's something going on in here, a little bit of wiring that's off that I can otherwise help out, so that all these goals and plans and ambitions and dreams and things that I want to do, if I can get myself in a place where those can find fruition because I'm no longer sabotaging myself, I can focus, I can take a task and actually freaking finish it instead of starting 70 tasks and leaving them 25% done. You know what I mean? I want to be done with all of that, because that has probably been a huge factor in our marriage overall, at least on my end, right? And so I'm now ready to freaking take this thing on and just accept it. I told my wife, I said, I surrender now to this. I'm surrendering to this, and we'll do what I can to set it straight. Now, I was using words like fix it and broken and this and that, and she was not liking that. But I'm like, no, Rach, just allow this. I can say that I'm broken or a part of me is broken because I want to think about it like I would a piece of equipment. It's just got some things wrong with it that just need to be treated or tweaked or fixed so that I can run correctly. It's an effect. Like, this is a very powerful thing, but if there's something in the output or delivery side of it that can just be adjusted so that all this power can be properly used,
Protected.
then I want to do it. So that's something I'm in the middle of right now.
With, like, looking back on your life, you're saying that, like, maybe some of your marital struggles came from, like, lack of communication. You had financial issues. You probably felt responsible for the financial issues. And I'm pretty certain that financial issues is, like, one of the biggest fear that men have and hate dealing with.
Yeah.
Like, everyone that we've talked to here so far, like, and everyone that we've talked to outside is like, when finances are hard, then that's what, like, really brings men down. Do you think that you were just kind of going through an ADHD time? Are you still struggling financially, or
I mean, we're not necessarily struggling financially
anymore?
Anymore. Yeah. I do, looking back, I'm like, you know what? Now that I've sort of learned more about the symptoms of ADHD and the effect it can have on marriage, on finances, on everything, right? I look back and I'm like, not that I want to just throw the blame on that and just say, oh, well, it's not my fault. It's this thing. No, as a man who wants to be a good provider and supporter and everything of a family, right? You look back and you're like, oh wow, I was pretty lousy. Why did we even have these struggles when other people, they just get it. They go to school, they get the career, they make money, and bam. But of course, there's no one size fits all option for any of us. Okay. Looking back, I'm like, maybe if I had acknowledged and treated possible ADHD, it probably could have put me on a better track that some of these things that we went through, maybe we would not have. But on the same token, we got to learn life lessons, sometimes the hard way, sometimes multiple times. And I think maybe I'm just one of those guys who needs to go through something multiple times before it finally freaking clicks. But when it does click, I feel like it can be more powerful. The manifestation of that power can be that much more impactful because of everything that was suffered up into that point or experienced.
I definitely agree with you about getting it fixed. It's like admitting that something is broken.
Mhm.
I didn't see anything success or great happening in my life until I sat down and I actually admitted that I had PTSD issues. And it's like, okay, now that I know what's broken, let's get it fixed.
Yeah.
So how often do you do therapy?
Well, Rachel and I do marriage therapy almost every week, and I do personal therapy, and she does personal therapy almost every week.
Would you contribute that to being a lot of help?
Yes, and it might be what finally allowed me to surrender to this and for it to finally click. But I had also told my wife that sometimes it feels like just the talk therapy part of things isn't necessarily because I could just talk to someone. Heck, we're talking right now. I could talk to a friend. I could vent. I can whatever. I can talk about things. But sometimes there are gems in those sessions that cause you to go, okay. I might not have gotten this in a regular conversation with a buddy. I think a couple sessions ago with my personal therapist, he had mentioned something about ADHD, and I started kind of like, you know what? Yeah, let's kind of explore this a little bit. I said, do you have an assessment or something like that? And that's kind of what started the ball rolling a few weeks ago. So, yeah, I would say that the therapy did provide an opportunity for me to finally say, okay, yeah, it's time.
Just to have a third party looking
Mhm.
into your life. And now, when we met in the Army, I know I was straight out of the infantry, pretty gung ho type of person. What was your kind of thought process of that? Like, what was your established relationship of where you were at in the Army versus before you got out? Like, what was the struggle there? Because you kind of went dark there for a bit, and I had no idea how to help you or bring you out at the time, but you left.
Yeah. So I guess you could say the working relationship between myself and my first chief, it was not a great. I mean, at first it was pretty good, but once I started making little, new soldier mistakes, misunderstanding things like that, it really strained the working relationship between me and my chief. And then then you came along, and it probably took one or two drills before you saw like you had some strain there too with this particular chief and other soldiers that had come and gone in the time that I was there. So I guess the first bit of it is just a rough working relationship. I mean, I could have done way better. I could have learned more. I could have made more efforts to learn and be a better soldier and show up better for the section and for my chief. But I wasn't very, I guess, smart or proactive in army terms, I guess. And I didn't embrace probably the life or the culture of it like I maybe should have. That led to some dark times. Then you came along, and then we all started sort of forming the section a little bit into what we wanted, but we were still a bit constrained by our previous chief. And when they moved on, and we were able to kind of, and this is the kind of crummy part. I think most of what caused me to leave had nothing really to do with the army at that point, because our old chief had gone, and we had started building the section into something really cool, and we started gaining the respect of other sections around us and other people around us. And honestly, like that was great. The few experiences that, like, the places we got to go and things we got to do toward the end there is almost enough where you're like, well, then why'd you leave? And I totally get that. But I think it had more to do what was going on at home, just personal life, finances falling apart, marriage was strained, being, new parents, and just everything that the world was throwing at us. It was just time at the time for me to move on from the Army. And part of me wishes I got to experience more with you guys in the section and see what we could have become together. But I was not what you would call soldier ready. Like, I was not mentally, emotionally, even physically. I mean, I was doing better physically than I had been with the previous chief. I had some physical training issues and stuff like that I was going through. But I think by the end, I was actually doing better. But again, there were a lot of different things going on in my life that I just didn't feel like I should be in a position as a soldier, and all that comes with that. So I did take some time, almost 2 years outside of the Army before I finally got back in.
So what changed in your life? What got better? And then you decided that you were going to hit it hard again. I mean, you're stacked again. Like, you lost weight. You came flying back in the Army. Now you're a non-commissioned officer leading soldiers and stoked about it.
So the catalyst for that was, Rachel wanted to go back to school, and I thought, I could use my Army benefits to help her through that and help pay for that, which is funny in itself because that fell apart. There were certain things I wasn't told, and I don't blame my recruiter. I just blame kind of the system, the whole system altogether. I was told that, yeah, you qualify to pass your benefits on to your wife. I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to get back in and do this thing. Well, by the time I was back in and I started emailing, all right, cool, I want to transfer these educational benefits to my wife. They're like, well, you don't qualify for them. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course I do. And then when I went up to Draper headquarters to confront them about it, like, okay, you qualify to pass the benefit on to your wife, but you don't qualify for the benefit.
Oof.
Oh, they're like, you need active duty time. You need this and that and the other. I'm like, cool. Wish I would have known that, but hey, I'm back in. So then it became making the best of the new situation, right? And I didn't come back in, obviously, to the 19th back with you guys, which part of me wishes I did, just to be with you guys, regardless of what the conditions of the unit or leadership, nothing, like just to be with you guys again, like it would have been worth it. But anyway, I ended up getting in the local unit there in my town in Richfield, which is the Alpha Battery 222nd Field Artillery. They're in the 65th Brigade. But anyway, it was great because I knew several of the people in the unit, some friends, and it's just a really cool, tight-knit unit. And we're artillery. We get to play with big guns. So, and it was just another side of the military that I was going to get to experience. So got in, and through the years started cultivating a love for the ammo section and just the team and everything. And got to a point where even before I was an E5, before I was a sergeant, there were, maybe because of my age compared to the other soldiers. But anyway, they started calling me chief, and I wasn't chief. I was just one of them, right? Specialist Lucero, whatever. But as I embraced it and then finally became an E5, again, I wasn't still technically a chief, but they treated me like I was. And for an artilleryman, typically you get in, you get on a gun, you work your way to a gun chief through all the different positions. And that's fun, and that's fine. For me, it's just kind of different. I never really embraced the gun itself or the idea of becoming a gun chief. But the idea of becoming an ammo chief meant a lot to me because I have also kind of resurrected my old MOS in this unit. I am the unit public affairs representative, which means I get to take the pictures and the videos and make the cool guy videos and do that, like provide pictures and stuff for soldiers who promote and do ceremonies and all this sort of stuff. So like I get to still do the job I had in the 19th, but in this unit, I get to provide that different sort of service that most artillery soldiers are not going to do, right? And then also, I wanted to become the master resiliency trainer in the unit, but I wasn't necessarily pursuing it per se. But then a resiliency trainer assistant thing popped up. They're like, yeah, we'd like to send 2 soldiers. We were thinking of you. And I was like, oh my gosh. Heck
So
yeah.
tell us what that is.
All right. So, yeah. So, a master resiliency trainer in a unit is one who brings, so every unit's supposed to do resiliency training. They go through 14 different, I think they call them skills, and they all have to do with mental health dynamics and things like that, right? Because a soldier, yeah, sure, we want to be physically fit. We want to know our job. We want to know this or that. But if we do not cultivate the mental, emotional side of it, then it's not going to go well, right? People are going to fall apart. They're not going to do their job well. They're not going to emotionally know how to interact with each other or adversity. They're not going to know how to make it through adverse times, which we are going to have as soldiers. So that's why the resiliency program is there. And I remember very specifically Sergeant Ben Miller. He was our resiliency trainer in the 19th. And I remember he did such a stellar job. I looked forward to master resiliency training, whereas a lot of times soldiers are like, oh, God, we got to sit through an hour of that crap, And oh, they're just going to talk about hunt the good stuff, whatever, right? People get kind of attitudes about resiliency training. They don't realize the importance of it and how being a physically fit soldier who knows your job is not enough. You need that portion of it. So I eventually, after getting the resiliency trainer assistant position, a year later, right before I became an E6 and got my staff sergeant rank, because you're supposed to be a staff sergeant to teach it, but I got a waiver. I was able to go to the school and over here at Camp Williams and get that position. So now in the unit, I'm the master resiliency trainer, the public affairs representative, and the ammo chief, and I love that. I want to be there. I want to do it. Most people see the ammo section as a place where soldiers get thrown in when they're being punished, when they've done something wrong, if they're not performing, whatever. They get thrown to the ammo. That's the culture of the ammo section in probably all artillery units, and I've been wanting to change that stupid perception, right? I don't think any section in a unit should be treated as the garbage section because that sets a bad precedent, right?
I mean, it just mentally shuts you off too. Because once you're there, they're like, oh, well, I'm here. So apparently I'm a piece of shit. I should just continue to be one.
Exactly. So I've been trying for years to change that stupid perception because I think every soldier, should know that they have worth. Even if they're underperforming, even if they've done something stupid, they have worth. And why not build back up, right? Instead of, oh, we're throwing out the trash. I hate that so bad. So I've tried to make a point for years. Like, if you're going to come to the section, we're going to work. We're going to work hard. We're going to serve the guns. That's our serve the guns unshrinkingly. That's our motto, right? So even though I've had some leaders who are like, this is stupid. You're wasting yourself here in the ammo. And I'm like, no, you don't understand why I don't feel like I am. Plus, being in ammo gives me a chance to run around the artillery battery, taking pictures and videos, doing interviews. It gives me a chance to cultivate my master resiliency training sessions and everything more fully than if I was on a gun. If you're on a gun, you're on a gun on the gun line, waiting for fire missions. I can't just leave the gun to go do all these other things that I feel like have value for the artillery battery. But I've had some that have shown me their disdain for me wanting to be there and for doing that. And then some people don't value, say, the public affairs side of things, the pictures, and they're like, oh, get the camera out of my face sort of thing. And you know that, especially in an SF unit. But there are also a lot of soldiers and even leaders who do value that sort of stuff. And I'm like, guys, trust me, I'm not here because I'm afraid to be on a gun or I'm just trying to be lazy, because all sections have their moments when we're working hard, we're busting it. But there are also times where you're sitting around waiting. Guns are waiting for fire missions. FDC is waiting for the fire direction control. They're waiting for fire missions from the higher ups. Ammo, we go and we do an ammo drop. We bust open pallets. We freaking load 6 guns with 100-pound rounds. Lots of, you know what I mean? Like, there are moments when we're busting it, but there are also moments when we're not. And I think for some people see the whole, oh, you just want to be on ammo, so you could just sit around it. It's like, no, I feel like I have a different mission. And I'm not trying to say, oh, treat me special. No, I feel like I have a different calling and mission for this unit. And being in the ammo allows me to do that better than I would otherwise.
It is powerful. So obviously you are a strong believer in the master resiliency training that we do in the military. Do you think just going through that yourself or becoming the trainer has made you a better person?
I'd like to say it is helping me become a better person. Yes, it is helping me not only realize the sort of problems that are there, but the importance of knowing how to, like we talk about real time resilience. That's one of the trainings. It's where things are happening in real time and to you're able to handle them as they're happening. And then of course that allows you to, when you're processing through it later, to process better than you would if you're just falling apart while things are happening.
Have you ever thought about telling your work that you do this type of work, like your civilian job, and how you could better benefit their company? Just kind of open the conversation of talking to people.
I guess I haven't really thought about uh, no, not the master resiliency trainer side of things. I had offered my skills as a graphic designer, videographer, whatever, a long time ago at my work. I was like, oh, by the way, I also do these things, and they probably swept that one right in the
I
garbage. But
don't feel like miners care about any of that.
yeah, and to be honest, like most of them would probably scoff at the idea of this as well. Oh, we don't need mental emotional help here. We leave our feeling at the gate, or that's the thing. Um, when you pull up to our mine, you turn a like a 90-degree corner in this beautiful canyon, right? And people joke that they leave their feelings at the point. It's about like half mile out from the mine, right? Oh, we're supposed to leave our feelings at the point. And then that's the thing about the coal mine. It could definitely use something like resiliency training. I mean, we have like a suicide training once a year kind of a thing, but a more comprehensive mental emotional sort of training, I think, could do them good if they would accept it, if they would not scoff at it. And
Well, I mean, everyone's going to scoff at it at the beginning.
yeah,
But I think once they start seeing the value in it and they go home and they drastically see that it improves their at home life too,
hmm
then they quit scoffing.
yeah, that's true. I mean, once you see the value in something, once you see where it can help you, yeah, yeah. And the coal mine. So we know the Army's a bit of a rough culture, right? Well, dial that up by, I don't know, at least 10. Um, because at least in the Army, we are instilled, they try to instill a sense of honor, a sense of duty, a sense of respect, and those sort of things. At the coal mine, we don't have the coal mine values, right? And so there's a culture there that is, when you hear people whining about toxic masculinity and stuff like that, like, sure, it's kind of alive and well there. And socially, it's behind in a lot of ways. It definitely could benefit from some education like this, because in terms of like that toxic masculinity thing, you've got a lot of kind of macho bully types that work in the coal mine. It's almost like you took all the think of all your high school or middle school bullies or whatever, and you gathered them all up into one workplace and just have at it, and sprinkled in with a few non-bully types. And it gets really ugly. There's a lot of ego, machismo type stuff going on. People trying to outdo each other which, okay, healthy competition, sure, great, but usually not healthy. It gets to unhealthy levels down there, and egos, and oh, I'm smarter than you, so we're going to do things this way. And I don't know, just a lot of clashing personalities and stuff. And I saw a lot of really ugly things, plus a lot of like a lot of sexual harassment, abuse, or assault type situations, even personal ones, things that happened to me where I'd had to tell guys, hey, you may get to touch your buddy's balls or whatever, fine, but I don't play those games, so just don't touch me. And some people I'd always give them a warning, verbal warning. Hey, I don't play those games, so we cool. And then there are 2 or 3 people I had to, let's just say I threw them across the room, and it took that much for them to like, oh, okay. But because I showed disdain for that sort of behavior, then a lot of people treated me differently. Oh, you're just a pussy. It's like, dude, not everyone likes their coworker buddies grabbing them, in certain geographical regions of their body. So it was just stupid, man. A lot of situations. And it's like, if you don't accept that sort of behavior, you don't need to be here. And it's like, dude, it's just a job. We come here to do a job and make money and provide for our families. Why do we have to sort of fit inside some sort of ridiculous, socially inept, socially backwards mold? Like, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to tell you, you have to act like me. Just don't tell me I have to act like you and we can just get along and do our job. But for some, it's not that simple.
Is there something that, because I mean, you were able to change the mindset of the ammo section for the artillery. Is there a part of you that thinks that you could change the mindset of your mining partners?
So there are some people that I noticed would shift some of their behaviors around me. Not even like I didn't have to ask, right? A lot of people. There are some people that would shift behaviors around me, or there were even people who kind of told me that they kind of want to do things a little bit differently or whatever, right? And whether it was my doing or not, like it's cool to see when people recognize that something is actually not cool or not that something is a problem and maybe I should tone it down or do something differently. But I'd like to think that hopefully, again, if we can touch one soul, convince one person to maybe make some shifts through behavioral things and not through being told to do something, then great. So, yeah, I hope that can happen.
Perfect. Now you're going to go home and try and pursue that.
Well, here's the thing. So I used to work underground. I did underground for 5.5 years, and underground is kind of a whole different animal from now where I work on the surface. We're in a small 4-man crew, and we're all pretty chill. We get along. None of these things that I've talked about really happen on the surface with us, at least our crew. But I have some interaction with some of the underground guys now, but not a whole lot.
So do you think maybe it is just being underground? There's no daylight, no natural light. You're just looking at blank walls all day. Like, do you think that's just kind of more or less just mentality getting to them and trying to stay sane?
I think the underground, the darkness, the conditions, it definitely plays into it because even I found myself at times like feeling the darkness, not just opening my eyes in the dark and seeing darkness, right? But feel almost like a heaviness, right? There is a heaviness, and I don't know if it's because you have millions of pounds of mountain above your head, and but there's that sort of sense of isolation when you're down there. It's dark, and in some places it's kind of hard to breathe, or there's a lot of dust, or there's CO in the air, there's smoke in the air from the vehicles. I mean, they do their best to obviously ventilate and keep it safe, but there are moments when you just feel the darkness. And yeah, it does take a toll. And that lack of sunlight, I mean, sometimes you get into work when it's dark outside, you work a whole shift and you're leaving when it's dark outside. Sometimes, like for the weekenders, they'll work 13 and a third, 13-hour shifts. And yeah, sometimes they'll go in the dark, work in the dark, come out in the dark, and have like 3 days of that. So it definitely takes its toll on you mentally, emotionally.
Because they had studies where they had people that would go into mines and just be in pure darkness for a day, 24 hours. And just like the lack of like light and understanding and like your senses, and people literally went mentally crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like you kind of had a glimpse of that when you were there? And that's kind of part of the reason why these guys who do this for 20 plus years and why they act the way they do.
Yeah, there are definitely people who like it gets to them. And if they don't have anything else in their lives to kind of help them keep it together while at work, I've seen the difference. I've seen some people who, yeah, they'll lose it. They'll lose it underground, or they just the way they act around people, it's like, dude, are you for real? And then there are other people who probably have maybe good family lives or healthy hobbies and things like that outside of there to help them cope with that. And the ones who don't, I mean, yeah, they're probably the ones who all that crap takes its toll on the most.
That's wild. That's not something that we think about.
No.
From everyday people. I don't think Chris even thinks about that. Do you? Not to that level, he says. The master plumber.
Yeah.
Well, something we like to do whenever we end these podcasts is some man advice. What do you have for man advice? What would you tell people if you could change something in everyone and tell someone that they should work on.
All right. Man advice. War for men. I would say one thing that's really important to me that I think can help all people is that if we see each other differently, we have all sorts of different beliefs, right? And different backgrounds and different things we've experienced. And that's great because we could be this big melting pot of different experiences and beliefs and things that can contribute to something much better in society instead of seeing each other as less than or more than, right? If we could value human life and recognize the worth of every single soul, I think that takes a lot. That takes a lot of courage to do. That takes a lot of shifting preconceived notions that we all kind of grow up with. Because in resiliency training, we talk about icebergs. We have these deep down beliefs and values and things, and a lot of times we are quite inflexible on those. Because sometimes we think that if we flex one way or another, we're betraying something, right? And I think if we can just learn to be a little more flexible, and when we're interacting with people who are completely different than us, it doesn't mean we have to either condone something that they do that we don't believe in or that we have to shift ourselves to become like them. No, we can still hold our ground and maintain who we are, but just see the worth that they have and the value in their being different and how it can contribute to something good. And like, let us be united on the things that we have in common, the values and the beliefs and things that we have in common. Let us not be divided by the things in the ways that we are different. Yeah, that's just what comes to mind.
That was also deep. Well, Lucero, dude, I guess I should call you Skyeler here. Skyeler, I really appreciate you coming out here from Richfield, part of this. So I think your story can definitely carry a lot of weight, can carry a lot of passion, and help a lot of people. So we appreciate you opening up, telling it to us.
Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to do so. I appreciate the opportunity I had to read for Ironhide, and because it meant I had to read the book several times, and this whole experience and what you guys are doing is very important. So thank you for what you do and for letting me be a part of it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, go buy the Audible book if you haven't already. Listen to his great voice. He does well. We appreciate everyone's support. And if you haven't liked, commented, and subscribed on this video on how great it was and Skyeler's awesome story, do so now. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Silver Peak Plumbing, for being our big sponsor to make sure all this can happen. This is War for Men podcast.